Zack Petroc and Steven Anderson. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Zack Petroc and Steven Anderson. Never mind the subtlety.
Is this on?
Zack Petroc and Steven Anderson.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Thank you all for coming out. All right, so we have a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to do my best to get through it all. But I will tell you what, recently someone came up to me and they said, I can't believe you've been around doing this since 2005 at your studio. Now, as a CEO of that studio, you kind of learn to field these observations in a professional way, so my natural reaction was, what? It's been that long? I didn't realize that. And then the guy says, so studios, finesse, so like you have more than one? And I said, well, actually, I have this one that I'm very fortunate enough to do most of my work out of, but I also have this one. So, yeah, smart guy, there's more than one. So the good thing about being around as long as we have is that it lets you predict future trends and it lets you evolve. And I'm really excited that I get to show this to you guys today, this new website called StoryMold, because this was built for our community. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things we inside ZBrush, going over some story moments for sculpt pitches. And you can't do one of these without a cautionary tale. And then Steven's going to help us talk about some approaches to stylized characters, doing things a little different in ZBrush with low-res meshes. A little bit of passion to purpose. And then that same guy, he said to me, you realize you can't do one of these without showing a piece of art you've done that no one's ever seen before, right? You know that? It's like, fine. So we got a mystery sculpt.
I haven't even seen it before.
You haven't? No one. No one has seen this yet. This is a very important question. The life expectancy of your art, okay? All of these are from stories that I love that were created a long, long time ago. But the stories gave them great life. So as a sculptor, I love objects. And as I look around at the things at my studio, I realize that I have them because I feel an emotional connection to them. This is a ticket stub from October 23rd, 1993. You used to get these as something you would have to give to the person before you could put it on your phone. So this was $6.50, the opening weekend of A Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, $6.50, freaking ripoff, right? But the movie was awesome, and it inspired me to want to maintain a piece of that experience. And more often than not, we do that through art and collectibles, a lot of things that we make here. Another case in point, are anyone else's spidey senses tingling? Up under the light on the top, he's in there. But, you know, the other great thing is that when you combine great characters with great stories, you actually create opportunities for other artists, like the great craftsmen at Sideshow. I love what they do. I'm addicted to it. I just need to find a way to partner with them before it bankrupts me. It's such an interesting time for us as a community. So ArtStation, I love it. It's inspiring and intimidating. But my only wish is that each one of these images was a portal to a story so I could get to know these characters better and develop that emotional connection and keep them around. Look at these guys. They have done more for us as artists to give us recognition than any other company that I know of. It should not go unmentioned. It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, like this right here. Absolutely. I just hate that there are not enough stories for us to contribute art to give that art we make a longer lasting life. So that is why we made StoryMold. This is a place for storytellers and the artists that bring those stories to life to come together. So let's talk about another thing ZBrush has done. They have created this community. All of you are part of this tribe. Everyone watching at home, this streaming is part of our tribe. It's a very powerful and open and accepting tribe. We often and also let in people like this, weird white guys that like to smoke the peace pipe. But think about this, if we just extend that tribe a little bit wider to include writer-creators, we can create some amazing pieces of art that can live for a long time. I actually know a lot of writer-creators right now who want to work with artists like you. So that's why we are gearing StoryMold more towards pre-production. It's about finding collaborators, building a following, and then getting recurring funding. So hopefully it works pretty simple. If you're a writer-creator, you go in and create a campaign. You can add images, videos, text. Tell the world what your story's about. You also tell our community what kind of collaborators you want to work with. Then you create fund levels. Tell your fans what they'll get for supporting you at that level. So if you're a writer-creator, you can get insight into writing your own script. Tell them how you're working with artists like this to bring your story to life. You can do one-on-one Skype calls, even studio visits. If you're an artist, a similar situation, create your campaign, tell the world what kind of art you make, and tell those story creators how you can help them. Then for these guys, I think of us more as an apprenticeship. So you're there, and for just $5 or $3 a month, you're getting insights into how they turn script pages into storyboards. You can get draw-over critiques. You can get how-to videos. The other cool thing about this, I think, is that at the bottom of each campaign, you can request to mold together or collaborate. When you do that, you automatically gain exposure to each other's followers, and that's incredibly powerful. We'll talk more about that idea of following in a minute. But this is Far, our senior software engineer. I don't know who the Asian guy standing behind him is. But the other thing we're doing in terms of collaboration is combining art and technology. So Far will have his own campaign, and he is going to let you fund him to influence the way the site is developed. So this thing can be molded into what we need it to be to make those campaigns even more successful. I don't know about you guys, but I think these things are going to be kind of popular in the near future, hence the name Story Mold. So now think about this. We're making great characters. They're alive in a great story. Now we have the capability to send those things anywhere in the world so your fans can instantly download them and print them out. It's here. It's powerful. It's ready for us to implement. All right, so now I'm going to do what the slide says and make a smooth transition to ZBrush. So we're going to talk about this guy first, and that idea of story-driving character. So this one's from a project I'm writing and working on with director Punwi Antrakun called Monster Summer. Let's go ahead in here and take a look at this guy. So I want to show you guys, before we go into the story behind this, just how I work in ZBrush and some of the techniques I use. I love when people put a lot of detail into their models and how they go in and finesse all that final detail. But I actually, in a situation like this where I'm doing a stylized character, I want to have a very organized low-res mesh because that lets me get the most perfect form that I can achieve. The less points I have to pull, the less chance I have of making a mistake and making things all wobbly. So let's go ahead in here. So we'll do things like this. If I isolate selection on this eyelid, you can see it's already on there. But if I go in here and go to crease, I'll hit crease on that shape, bring everything back. So now you can see when it's in subdiv mode, dynamic subdiv. So I turn that off. You can see I can turn on dynamic subdiv, and I don't have to add any support edges around that line. So it maintains a very crisp, precise read. So this is really important when you're creating stylized characters. All these direct form changes are something you need to pay attention to. You really want to finesse these lines, and making sure they're going from thin to thick, and making sure that every point around this surface is very purposely placed. So honestly, a lot of what I do when I'm working on a character like this is use the Move tool. I think you guys might have heard this from other stylized character sculptors before. But really, the great thing is if I use the Move tool and if I smooth, I don't have a bunch of support edges there that are going to fall apart. So that shape is not going to get wobbly and wonky as it goes around that area. The other thing I like to do is set up the mesh so it follows the contour. And you can do some great things with ZRemesher. ZRemesher has become a phenomenal tool. So a lot of times we'll do that where it blocks something in, hit ZRemesher just to get it in the ballpark, and then worry about refining it later. Similar thing down here. So, but the story behind this guy, if we take a look here. So this is actually a school mascot head. So this is our hero Cam. And this is Monster Summer. It's a live-action comedy horror, kind of in the vein of Shaun of the Dead, right? But with like a beastly new love story twist. So you got a little bit of an edgy teen wolf thing going on. So it just so happens that he's at school. He's the school mascot. He started to transform into this demon. All he could do was grab that head to try to cover his hideous face, and then the horns end up ripping out of it and kind of creating this guy here. So the reason we chose to do that with this sculpt is because when you're making these things for a pitch, so we take these things out to pitch to production companies to try to get a new project going, and there are beats in every genre. So a horror beat that I love is the reveal of the creature, right? That's a cool thing. So that was our first thought. Well, let's make this awesome creature sculpt. But then we thought, well, why reveal that up front? You know, that's such a cool thing. Why not make a sculpt that speaks to the genre, the comedy horror, and then have it cover the face so that then you don't lose that reveal. And then that's still something fun that you can talk to the executives about and bring on one of you guys to help us design. So let's go in and talk about one more idea with the cloth. Go solo. So speaking to that same philosophy, we got to show this earlier in the workshop. But I have extruded this for the purposes of printing. But when you do that, you can no longer step up and down in subdivision levels, right? So then we're right back where we started with that idea of having to smooth and push and pull all these points to get a nice crisp line. And when I want to go back and iterate on this, I don't want to have to deal with that. So let's see if we can get this right. Actually, we tried it earlier, so I do think this will work now. I'm going to go ahead and go over to ZModeler. Now, I've already done this, so I know that this, at the beginning, before I subdivided it, was one polygon. Right here was one polygon. So by counting the number of spans in here, 7, I know that ZBrush added 7 polygons across one. Right? And it's going to sound a little complex, but I think it'll make more sense as we walk through it. So what I do on this extruded side is insert a total of 7 polygons. Or 7 loops. 6, 7. Okay. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 6, 7. Okay, we're there. All right. So let's go ahead to our subtool, and to make this a little bit easier, we will split hidden. So we have this as a standalone. Now, in theory, with a drum roll, we should be able, yes, thank you, to reconstruct those subdivs back down to this lower level. This is really powerful and very helpful. I actually, yeah, I actually do this a lot because I do, you know, again, back to that idea of sculpting on a stylized character. This is kind of what I spend a lot of my time doing, really setting up these lines and looking at the hits and the rhythms that they're creating. All right. Okay, so let's leave this guy for a minute. And let's go back over here. So I want to give you guys a quick cautionary tale. A ceramics professor, just like this room, divided the class in half. He took the left half of the class and he said, you will be graded on the total number of vessels you throw during that entire semester. The right half, you will be graded on one vessel and the craftsmanship that you achieve in that one vessel. You have the entire semester to do it. So which one of those two groups do you think were the better craftsmen at the end of that semester? You're right, the ones that threw the most pots. So that is my cautionary tale to you, because I started this project a long time ago, attaboy, and I dove right in. I thought, I'm going to make this one vessel, and I'm going to make it perfect. So I would encourage you guys to throw out that idea. I see a lot of students do that where they think, I need one piece for my portfolio, and it's got to be amazing. I think the way you really get to that piece is to do 10 of them. That's the best way to achieve that. So we're going to switch over now to Steven and let him show some awesome techniques about this guy in ZBrush. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So while he's loading that file, So the synopsis, the premise for that one is that it's an action-adventure feature film in the tone of Stranger Things, but set in a large fictitious medieval world. So just to give you context of where that's coming from. And are you all set? Or do you need to load that file?
I think so. I mean, it's loading, so I mean, it'll be a little while, but we can go through the other slides and
Okay, perfect.
Should be good. Technology, you can multitask a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. Anyway, thank you. I'm Steven Anderson. Like many of you, dedicated family man, husband and father, daylight. I'm a Walt Disney Imagineer. Work on the parks at Disneyland Tokyo, and by night I masquerade as an instructor for ZBrush. Pretty fun. Some of my work right there. One of the things we really want to talk to you about today are kind of a range of topics, ranging from collaboration, the importance of collaboration, and really kind of hinting at like how you can pull story into what it is that you're working on. This is a character, Reeve, that we did for Attaboy. Really fun character to work on. So why do we collaborate? Okay, that's the million-dollar question, right? Collaboration helps us to spawn new ideas, filter out less effective ones, and fosters an environment where good ideas can evolve. That's what we're looking for, is growth, right? It's by a famous philosopher, Steven Anderson. Really good-looking guy. So this is kind of some of the development that we went through, or I guess that I went through trying to figure out kind of what this costume ought to look like, and pieces to involve, details to include. It includes gathering reference, figuring out different themes that we wanted to hit on. One of the things that Zack really liked was the idea of having oak leaves and oak trees or owls, and especially this is a youth uniform for several of the characters as they're going through. Maybe you can help me
the religious order youth.
The religious order youth, where they're they're just going through. They're growing into the army and growing into the order of life and whatnot. And so these owls and having their wings tied, and they're growing into adulthood, but they can't fly yet. So just kind of the symbolism and trying to think of those things, different ideas on costume and how they can fit to an era, and how they can mirror different shapes, different ideas. Okay, and then we go through and take those ideas and try to push them through different concepts and sketches and pulling together different shapes. And it was kind of interesting. I love being able to collaborate. It's one of the things that Zack wanted to be able to hit on, that hood back here. We were able to get to that. He wanted to be able to get kind of a directionality. And so he showed me a little bit of an example of, maybe have the feathers going in this way. And we had it have them tied up at the top so that it's kind of falling from a central area. It's kind of a fun thing, but following that theme of owls and youth owls and having the feathers. Oh, let me see. It's
that might be your last one.
Interesting. I thought that. Let's see if it's open. It is open. Let's jump over into ZBrush then. Okay, so unhit solo because we don't need solo. Okay, so one of the things we started off doing to be able to work on this project was dioramas. This is kind of something that, kind of like what Zack did with his Monster Summer. He wanted to explore ideas of something to be able to display for Attaboy. And so this is kind of it's actually the underside of a cliff. And these trees are growing, and they're grabbing onto these coffins, and they're growing out the bottom of the cliff. It was a really fun idea, and so this is my first stab at it. After just hearing the idea, I just kind of went ahead and just took it and, let's see, it's kind of hard to see. Let's brighten that up some. That's a little better. Okay, cool. So yeah, growing out the bottom side of that cliff. The idea is that inside of one of the coffins is supposed to have this ingredient that Attaboy and the rest of his crew are supposed to be trying to get to be able to formulate this potion. And so these trees, they're reacting to that ingredient, and they're trying to get to it, but they can't quite get to it because of the power of this serum that's in that's inside of this coffin. Now, this first pose, it wasn't really very successful. It wasn't really telling the story. It wasn't supporting that main idea. So we took another stab at it, and going through, we opened it up, and we added characters, and we added a central coffin with a little dead guy, and a secret ingredient, which Attaboy is, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Attaboy, right? Yeah, we're going to say it's
That's
Attaboy.
him.
You know, he's not ready to be shot. No, anyway. He's reaching forward to be able to get that serum, to be able to get that ingredient. And these roots, they're being affected by the power of this serum. And as they're trying to grow in toward the ingredient, toward that coffin, they're kind of being pushed out. Same thing even with the rock. The rock is kind of designed to almost mirror that same sort of idea where it's being pushed out. These other roots are trying to wrap around and grab and pull into the coffin, you know. So all these things are trying to pull together to support this central idea. And these characters, everything's trying to show the peril. And this is something that I feel like is really strong about trying to about ZBrush. It allows you to be able to quickly iterate and get ideas out, and it's just a sketch, right? But it helps you to try to get ideas out about how you can tell a story, include character, and try to show maybe a little bit about how you can put in obstacles and show the main goal and figure out what's important about who these characters are, and we can decide that through the story, or through how we show things, how we design them. So when Reeve started out, a couple of things are out of place because we had like reposed the body and things like that. Yeah, this is early pass on Reeve. Very different with the feathers and very different ideas for areas of detail, areas of rest. Very different design for owls, and we'll talk about we'll show a little bit about kind of how the progression went on these. Okay, but this is kind of how it started. A lot of what we wanted to do is figure out a special, not a special design, but a unique design, something a little bit that can go into appealing to youth, something that can appeal to the whole family, but that really kind of reads really in an appealing way. So here's a more advanced pass on Reeve, where he's got a lot thinner of a face. Zach was actually the one that went through and developed the face part of it. He's wanting to go through and try to figure out kind of the design language of that. I designed I worked on a lot of the character, the body stuff, the clothing. I tried to figure out how it all worked together. At one point, we had the sleeves for this overall coat kind of hanging out the back. We decided that it broke silhouette, and it didn't quite create this streamlined sort of look. And then eventually we took him in, and he became this guy. So I was able to go in, I was able to take the full character. I took the head, I went through and posed him. Kind of went back and forth a little bit, got some notes from the crabby art director, and he gets a little grumpy sometimes.
I'm old.
Yeah. No. No, he's great to work with. He's real fun. Anyway, and we were able to kind of figure out who this character was. Originally, I had gone through and explored a running pose with them, and it didn't really support who Reeve was. It didn't support the story elements of what Zach would like to tell with Attaboy. And so he wanted to be kind of a stuck-up, kind of an ornery kind of kid.
Yeah.
And so he's got
Entitled.
this entitled. I mean, so he looks peeved. You want him to look like something just happened. Somebody broke a little alchemist bottle there in front of him, and he's just kind of like, "Come on, I was taking my beauty shot right here. What's wrong with you guys?" Okay, so that's Reeve. So we went through and redesigned kind of the sleeves and how those would fit onto the coat, and they work in a cool way that they kind of wrap over around his arms. They have those feathers, again, mirroring that idea of the owls. I redesigned the owls themselves to feel younger. And let's see, oh shoot. They are, I'm not even going to try that. Come on, there we go. Stop it. I always hit the wrong buttons. Why does that always happen? There we go. So before, I mean, they had looked, wow, solo mode, it's always fun. Before they had looked longer and smaller heads, they looked more adult. But as we wanted them to feel younger, more appealing, cuter, you know, and so tried to make it a larger head, large eyes, tried to make it feel more like it would hint at that they're the youth order, that they're the youth growing into the adulthood. So that's a lot of what my experience has been with this. It's been a great experience, and it's and as every character that you work on, every story that you work on, you grow and you learn how to incorporate more storytelling and more appeal. So yeah, that's
Cool.
me.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead. I was going to take this next section here and talk about a little bit of how I developed the character, the face, and some philosophies that I like to look at when creating a character. So one thing you rarely see, even when someone says a whip, doesn't it seem like they've already been working on it for 2 or 3 months? Like, hey, I just started this, I want to show you, but they're already beautiful. So, shit. What we're going to do with this guy is look at how we got there and then some of the simplification that we use to do it. So this is something I like to do. We go in here to these eyebrows. So again, same technique as before. You'll notice that it's all just creased. So if I go under geometry and crease, then I'll, let's see, uncrease all. Okay, so this is what it would normally look like, right? Just a little kind of mushy surface here.
It's pretty.
But what you can do is by going in and isolating a view, so opening up that edge line, when you hit crease, it's automatically going to throw a crease on that edge, right?
That was a cool trick, actually. The lasso select, being able to use that. That's one that I learned from Zack, actually.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really useful.
The selector. I don't know if you guys know that's to select an entire edge loop. It's pretty cool. So if you're on the lasso select, we do this in slower. So if you're on the lasso select and you hover over an edge and click, it'll grab that whole loop. So a very powerful, easy way to select it. Yeah. And let's see if I hit smooth right now, you can see I don't have that corner. Well, I want that corner because I want it to be nice and sharp. So I can also lasso select just this face, go over here and hit crease again. So now when I hit D, I've got a nice crisp corner. So same thing here. It's just a really powerful, clean way to make these meshes. Let's go back through and turn off dynamic. So similar thing with the hair. You know, this is not done, but you know, it's getting a little bit closer. So I used a similar technique. And I wanted to stress the fact that ZBrush is so powerful now, especially with ZModeler, that you don't need these incredibly dense meshes to create these pieces of art. Sometimes, actually, for me, it's often easier, like we talked about before, if I have these lower res meshes, so then I don't have to worry about all the other in-between points that I'm pushing and pulling. I can just look at this edge, look at that shape, and do some quick pushing and pulling to get it into place. So another trick I'll use with this guy, you can see if I go to the body mesh, so he has color, right, on him, but he's not a higher subdivision level. So what I do to make that happen is essentially create a texture. So what I want to do is create a high-res texture on this low-res mesh so I can have a really nice crisp line like the one around these lips. Right? So actually, while we are talking about that mesh and those lips, let me go down to the texture map, turn this off, and turn on the wireframe. So these are just polygroups. But when you're working on a stylized character, they can be very beneficial. For starters, they're landmarks. They tell you exactly where things need to be. So if you guys have a story with multiple characters like we do, then what you'd want to do is make sure that this edge loop right here that's denoted by this polygroup is always in the same position on every character. It always marks the outside of the lip. So what that does is lets riggers automatically do a lot of things. You know, it's all based on point order. They know exactly where that lip is supposed to be. They hit a button and they're 90% of the way there. This also helps for your texture artists because they can take one texture map that's been applied to this mesh, throw it on another one. The lips are already going to line up. So it's very powerful. Then they just tweak it from there. So it really lets you kind of establish this baseline. The other thing that I like about this mesh is this. So this would be the production level of this mesh, this level of detail, so we can get all the creasing and nasolabial fold happening the way we want it to. But you can go in here and hit reconstruct subdiv. So what's cool is that we've kept all the poly groups. Right? So this edge right here still represents the end of that lip. But speaking back to that idea of making big changes with as few points as possible, now if I come in here, let's say I want to make this ear a little crazy, I can pull this quickly. So now I'm dealing with half the number of points, right? I'm not dealing with all the stuff that's in there in between. I'm going to let ZBrush perfectly calculate that all out for me after the fact. So as soon as I hit divide, I've got a line that should perfectly conform to that shape. So it's really a powerful way to set up a mesh. And you can see we have polygroups throughout. But back to that idea of texturing, let's go up to this level. And I like to go into my subdiv and let's see, I want to duplicate. So I'll grab this guy and move him down to the bottom just so I don't confuse myself with which one this is. And I'll call it paint. So now what I'm going to do, let's isolate selection on this guy, turn off the wireframe. So the texture is already off. Oh, let me do it, sorry, instead of using a hotkey, I'll do it here so you can see. So let's go ahead and divide it up a few times. So here's that high-res mesh. Actually, delete that, so we only have 5. So here's a high-res mesh that can hold a lot of detail on the poly paint. Let's go ahead and fill it. I'm just going to go color, fill, so just get a base color. And now let's say I want to get a nice, crisp, clean, stylized line right along that lip. So I'm going to go ahead and step back down. And the other great thing about these poly groups is that I can just click on that group. Let's do both lips. Click on that group. And now I have these lips selected. Subdivide it back up. So now I will go in with some color. And just for our test here, we'll go fill object. So we have our lips. If we turn our perfect shade. So now what we want to do is get this sharp texture onto that low-res mesh. So to do that, we're going to go into texture map. Let me just turn this one off so it's a little less confusing. Let's see. And we want to go to create a new texture map, create, and new from polypaint. So what this is going to be doing is looking at this polypaint to create that new texture map for us.
And the important thing is only just to have UVs on it, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, make sure you put UVs on that guy first. We already had them on this guy.
Right.
So the great thing is once you put them on here, so you duplicate that mesh, even if you subdivide it up, you're not ruining the integrity of those UVs. So we can go back to this guy, and go down to our UV map. And, oh, sorry, we're going to go to the texture map. Here's another trick to this whole process. Let's step back down to this guy. You have to clone this texture for it to show up. So go ahead and hit clone. Now I'm just using the arrow keys to step back up to my top mesh. Now if I go here, you'll see that new texture. So if I load that, it's pretty cool because we have our low-res mesh with a really nice, sharp line. So,
Which otherwise it'd be nice and fuzzy, kind of like
Right.
between the two poly loops that it has.
yeah, let's see if I can do this just to see a test here. So you can see this way, this is about as clean as you could get it before. So that's why it's great to do that technique and not have to worry about those two things kind of colliding together. So the other part that I like to do, a lot of times I will block something in a really rough way, and then I'll go back and tweak that mesh and look at it a little bit. But what I like about this mesh is that a lot of these poly groups denote a big surface change. So looking from what would be this bottom surface of the nose to the inside part of the nostril. And the other cool thing is that this loops around and connects to itself. And that's because I know that when I'm developing this character, this transition from the nose into the cheek and all the other surfaces is very important. So I want to make sure that I can have a really crisp, well-defined line to achieve that. So just like that. Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and switch back to our presentation. I actually want to show you guys something new that's really cool. So speaking to that idea of how I start a project, this is something called Bluescape. It's a new software. And I love the fact that it's so simple but useful for what we do. Kind of reminds me of how ZBrush revolutionized things. So basically think of it as a digital blackboard. So I don't want to zoom in because I don't want to copyright infringe any of these images here, but this is how I'll start a project now. So I know a lot of companies in town in the entertainment industry have started using this, and they have their own API so you can link it to other tools. But in a nutshell, I just lay out my entire story and that entire world in this way. So I'll divide it into world and characters and story. You can even come in and write all your notes down. You can have note cards for your entire story right there, so you can walk someone through those. The other cool thing is it's kind of got a built-in Google Hangout, so I could converse with Steven, and we could have him log into this. I can drive. And we can have a mic'd conversation, and I can go to each one of these images and say, this is what I like about this, this is why it's important. So, using it in other applications, it's really powerful when you're working with an art director, because you can throw images of draw-overs up here and organize it all in a really powerful way. So I just wanted to touch on that, because I just recently found out about it, and it's pretty freaking cool. All right, let's go back here. So another thing, this is a story on Story Mold. It's a short film production by writer-directors Marcus Lee and Punwi Antrakun. So this is an awesome project. It's going to take you from start to finish throughout the production of this short all the way to what I think they'll get to be able to turn into a feature film. So obviously I can't guarantee that if you put this thing up on Story Mold that it's going to be a success, but we'd already have God tied into this one. This is actor Rob Benedict for any Supernatural fans. So it's pretty amazing that they got him to be a part of this. And I'm going to tell you why ZBrush was the reason that he is involved with this project. So this is him as their main character. But right now, they're doing some incredibly smart things like the thing that we're going to look at today. So you can go in, and for their funds and rewards, you can find out about how they're working with concept designers to create these things in ZBrush. You can learn about how they're doing their green screen shoots. But the really cool thing they did, I think this was really smart, is that they made this sculpt in ZBrush. They didn't have this face on it. It was more of a generic face. But they brought it to Rob, and they said, hey, look what we can do. This is another story moment sculpt. And by bringing it to him and showing them their potential as artists, that got him excited about the story and the art together, and he said, all right, I'm on board. So that's really, when you bring these things to life, it's a very slow process, and you have to build a snowball. And the more pieces you get into play to start that thing rolling, the more likely you are to actually turn this into a real project. So here's our link to this. But again, I think they just showed this to him. They said, hey, we're going to print it out. What? You can print these things out in 3D? Like, I think we take it for granted, all these things that we can do. But, to a lot of other individuals that you're trying to sell your idea to, it's still very impressive. So let's talk about one more element that ZBrush does that's kind of amazing. So right now, we have that idea of a tribe, but it's amazing how much power we have. All you have to do, you can log in through Facebook if you hate passwords like I do. All you have to do is find their campaign and hit that follow button. That's it. By hitting follow and doing nothing else, you are helping to bring this story to life, because social proof is now a commodity. Right? Social proof is a commodity that sells. So we as a community have the power to make that a reality. Okay, now it's time for the moment all of you probably forgot was coming. Let's come back. Actually, I should open it up to questions too. If any of you guys feel like you have questions, we can keep this really informal.
I was going to say psych.
Yeah.
We got one here in the front row. I'm back!
Yeah.
I love the crease function. I wanted to know if you are able to vary the crease from beginning to end, adding tapering within the crease, or is it
Right.
constant?
Like
That-
to have it be more crease
yeah.
at the beginning and less crease at the end?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, but not yet is the answer. It's
No.
coming.
Just going to keep it right there. You can, however, tell ZBrush to not hold the creasing after a certain number of subdivision levels. So you can tell it to only hold the crease for, like, say, 2, 3, and then it doesn't crease anymore after that. But no, there's no variation in crease. Always 100%, just like me. Go.
Yeah.
Zach, go.
It might be in the,
You got about-
the next feature, right?
Zach, you got about 10, 15?
Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. Excellent. So then, all right. So this one is from a story called Police Navidad. All right. So the inspiration for this one is that at my house we kind of have a tradition, a family tradition of watching Christmas movies at the holidays. But every year it gets harder for me to pull my sons away from the video games to get them to watch one with me. So last year I was only able to get my youngest to do it because my oldest was already on the game system. So he comes over, I turn the TV on, and Feliz Navidad is playing in a commercial. And he says, hey, Dad, is that how they say cops in Mexico? Police Navidad. And I thought, that's a great freaking name for a movie. I'm going to use it and make a Christmas action comedy so badass that it'll pull them away from their video games and keep that family tradition alive forever. Thanks. Man. So we started this one in that same way, going into Bluescape and fleshing this thing out. But the log line for this one is that, so it's Police Navidad, and it's about a naive border cop who gets reassigned to a small Mexican town on a relations program, where the hoodlum teens he recently deported are the only ones that can help him stop a horde of subterranean Mayan underlords with an overdue plan to end the effing world. All right? In 5 years, excellent, excellent. In 5 years, I want you to be able to turn to the person next to you and say, you know what? I worked on that movie. That gave me my break to get into the industry. Too bad it sucked. No, it won't suck. We can make it awesome. That's why we're here. All right, so let's go back to this. Again, another story moment. The other thing I love talking about story and sculpting and its collectibles and this idea that we have now with this synergy, right? So this is a salamander that the underground overlord albinos ride. So they ride these giant salamanders. They live underground, and they've taken over all these cave creatures. But what I like about this, it's going to be a live action film. But I like the fact that you can take a story idea and port it out to all these different styles of sculpting. I think that's really powerful. And I thought that this would be kind of a fun one to do in a very stylized way. So I don't know if you can see what's going on here, but long and short of it, in the story, these Mayan artifacts show up. No one knows where they're coming from. So this guy's reassigned to this town. He goes investigating, goes down into this cave, and ends up falling into this deeper hole and finds this beautiful array of gorgeous Mayan artifacts from floor to ceiling. So lo and behold, a few feet behind him, this giant salamander rises up. It's ready to rip his head off. That's how the story was first written. But then we realized, okay, you have him and these hoodlum teens. They went on this little adventure together. They're down there. They finally found the artifacts. Yes. But we want this salamander to have a reveal. So we thought it would be really cool if these Mayans tied these skulls, these rotted human skulls, to it like a leash, so that then when our hero's arguing with these hoodlum teens about what they're going to do with these artifacts, all of a sudden around them in this waist-high water, bloop, 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 these human skulls just start popping out. They're, what the hell? And then all of a sudden this guy rises up, and that's a cool, fun story moment. So it's kind of interesting how all these things are interweaved, and by looking at the story and then thinking about a sculpt, you can actually improve the underlying story. So this is just part of it. I do love that idea of the dynamic of different characters. So we're going to make some of the kids fighting this guy, maybe holding a piñata stick or something, and they'll be out here in these other sections getting ready to do battle. But just to talk about one more idea on that high to low res thing, all I did was these are going to be, in doing all that research, looking at the tattoos and the embossing of the body that the Mayans did, I thought it'd be really cool if we did some of that on this salamander creature. So in order to do that, this is where we get to use ZRemesher as well. I just put color on here, just went in with black color on poly paint and painted that guy in there. And then just hit extract and accept. All right, and you've automatically got this mesh. So the interesting thing is that right now it's pretty irregular. But if I go in and grab this guy, oh, sorry, it's going to save that for me. And let's go down to delete that mesh. Oh, so actually, we're going to go into geometry, modify topology, and then delete hidden. Okay, so now I just have this single surface. What I can do is go under ZRemesher and hit remesh. I usually end up having to do this a few times. But basically what this is going to let me do is lay out that low-res mesh in a really, absolutely, ridiculously quick way. Let's just put this on half. Take that lower, let's see, remesher, lower, boom. So what you end up with is a pretty clean version. Getting back to that same idea of how do I get this low-res mesh so I can pull nice, clean lines. And then if you need to, you can always go into ZRemesher, and by holding down Alt and clicking on some of these guys, you can get rid of even more of them. So what I did for that salamander, I would do this, project it on to the mesh, and then just end up, then it conforms to that body perfectly. Then by going into ZRemesher, let's see, you can now also extrude. So let's go on to, in QMesh that will extrude, but let's go to all polys. You can see, so boom. We can pull out that really crisp, clean mesh. Guess what else we can do? We can also go in there and add those creases in a really easy way. So let's just grab this one, hide that, and then go back to geometry, crease, crease, and there it is. So that then when we hit smooth, you can start to get those really nice, perfectly machine-looking, clean lines. Cool. All right. So wrapping things up here, I want to leave you guys with this quote. For those of you who are artists who are waiting to put your work out there in the world, for those of you who are storytellers and think your story is just not quite good enough, this is very important. Done is better than good. Whatever you think you can do or believe you can do, begin it. Action has magic, grace, and power in it. That is very important for us right now. I'll leave you with this thought, passion versus purpose. For a long time, I was very passionate about achieving my art goals. I wanted to work in the visual effects industry. I wanted to sculpt a main character. I wanted to work at Disney. I'm very fortunate to have achieved all those things, but all of those are a passion. They're a very personal passion. When you talk about a purpose, that deals with how you positively impact others. How do you impact the community? And for me, that's why I'm excited about Story Mold, because I feel like it can help me serve that purpose. I want to invite all of you guys out to my studio because I want to hear what you guys are doing with your art and your stories. I want creators like Pun and Marcus to have the chance to take that short film and turn it into a feature film that some of you can work on. And I want my purpose to be about creating more opportunities for storytellers and artists like all of you. So all I ask, I know that some of you are still in that mindset of having to focus on your passion. If you take 1 minute, log into this site, and just follow one campaign with that simple gesture, you are automatically contributing to a bigger purpose. Thank you all.
The hair on the back of my neck standing up there.
What?
I said, geez, I'm going to expect you to pop by.
I should have told you the inspiration for that one.
Well, what,
If we had
you can't, what are
time.
we doing here, man? It's like,
Huh?
Saturday, yeah.
Oh,
What's the
okay.
inspiration for that one?
This
Am I on
one,
here?
this one's a little, okay, so Monster Summer. My wife and I recently moved to a new community with some of the top schools in the state. And like everyone
You
else
do that
there,
when you have kids, yeah.
we have kids. That's why we did it, right? Like all those other people. But we were shocked when we discovered how many of those other parents were completely obsessed with transforming their kids into the perfect college candidate. So, right? Without any regard for how much stress or anxiety it's causing them. This is true. So we thought, what if we take the impact stress has on some kids and exaggerate it by literally turning them into flesh-eating beasts, but we make it be the fault of their perfection-obsessed parents. So, thanks. So with that one, you've all heard of the Secret Brotherhood.
Give me the
right?
textbooks. I need the textbooks.
Yes. So we invented the Secret Motherhood. A group of helicopter moms that are so obsessed with their children's perfection, they just made a pact with the Dark Lord himself to guarantee their kids are the best.
Somebody cue the Pink Floyd. Oh.
Bam! So that's that one.
Okay, another round of applause for Zack Petroc and Stephen Anderson, everybody.
That'll be awesome.
I'm Louis Tucci, live with